guys, what we're going to do is, this is going to be your first little lesson as far as what we're going to be talking about today, and what we're going to talk about is Adobe Illustrator. As I mentioned in class, Adobe Illustrator is a vector program. So when we're dealing with vectors, we're dealing with mathematical formulas, and that's what Illustrator is primarily made for. It is a great program for creating logos in. It is a great program for creating any kind of artwork that is going to be scaled in any size. As we talked about in class, you may have seen, Photoshop has these little like boxes that basically have one color in them. And when we try and scale things in boxes, Adobe Photoshop actually creates or educationally guesses which boxes go with each other. So it's not very accurate. So when you have a graphic that is going to be scaled up higher, it does tend to blur. So what we're going to start out with our boot camp, and we're going to talk about Adobe Illustrator. And as what you probably see here is that I do have Adobe Illustrator open. Illustrator is a great program when we're dealing with vector programs or vector artwork. So I'm going to kind of show you how to use it. Now I am using a Windows version of Adobe Illustrator. It is the latest version that's out there. It's the 2020 version. And you may see something a little bit different than what I'm seeing here, and that's okay. They're pretty much all, depending on if you have a Mac or a Windows platform, they're going to be consistent in how they actually perform or how they look. So many of the things I'm going to be showing you are going to be very, very similar. Some of the things that I'll kind of like point out is some little things that are on a Mac are going to be a little different as they are on Windows. Primarily, it's going to be, you're going to see Adobe Illustrator written up in the top left corner of Adobe Illustrator. And that's really where you're going to find a lot of your preferences and things that quit the program. Stuff like that, you're going to find there. In a Windows platform, you're going to find those under either File or Edit in the menu. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the fun tool that we can actually say is that one of the tools in Illustrator that you should use for either drawing in Illustrator, or I actually use it in Photoshop, is called the pen tool. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to start our program, or start Adobe Illustrator. And over on the left side, you're going to see a little button that says Create New. So I'm going to create new. And here's where we have our little launch screen. This is going to give you any of the information that you need to create the document size. So you're going to see that here are basically some pre-made presets. So you can kind of see certain sizes, like letter sizes 11 by 8.5. Or there's 3.5 by 2, or other types of file formats, or not file formats, but sizes. Over on the left, you're going to find that there is a width and height, and you can change these to your preference. But with Adobe Illustrator, I don't usually pay attention to those because it doesn't really matter much. If you're trying to design something that is in a certain size, then yeah, it does matter. But in most cases, if you're designing a logo, it doesn't really matter because it doesn't really base as far as size goes. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just hit create. I'm going to ignore everything that's there, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit create. So with this set started, you can kind of see that what we have is a white box, and that white box is your kind of like piece of paper that's on a desktop. All right, just think of it like that. All right, I can magnify out. As you can see, I am holding down, if you're wondering how I'm zooming in and zooming out, I am using the Control- and the Control+. Control minus and Control plus are the zoom in, zoom out functions on a Windows platform. On a Mac version, it is Command plus and Command minus. All right, same thing, except different control. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually demonstrate the pen tool, and as you can see over here, you can kind of see that I have a toolbox over here on the left side. As you can see, I have all these different tools here, and what I'm going to basically concentrate on are going to be these two tools up in the left. One is called a selection tool, and one is called a direct selection tool. Okay. All right. So I'm going to concentrate on those right now, and also the pen tool. If I click and hold on the pen tool, you can see that there's a pen tool, and there's an anchor point tool. If you do have an old version of Illustrator, you may, when you click and hold on that, you may see two other buttons. One that says Add Anchor Point, and one that says Subtract Anchor Point. That was basically in there, but I like how they took it out, because it doesn't, typically you don't actually go back to the menu to choose it. All right. So it is a pen tool and it's an anchor point tool. These are the two tools that we're going to actually utilize. But before we do that, I am going to go back to the view menu. So I'm going to go to view, and I'm going to go to show grid. And what that's going to do is it's going to show me all the little lines. There are some darker ones and there are some lighter ones. All right. I'm going to go back to view, and I'm going to go to snap to grid, which is the option under view. All right, that's going to demonstrate how I'm going to, or what it's going to do is if I put something down, it's going to actually snap to one of those lines, anything that's close by to where you're going to click. All right. So a little bit about the pen tool. Pen tool is more or less kind of like a dot-to-dot tool. If you remember how when you were young and you had art class, you used to get these little activity books that you would go ahead and hit these little dots or draw from dot to dot to dot that are numbered. Same thing applies, except here you were drawing the dots as you go. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use these. So I'm going to use my pen tool. I'm going to magnify in here so you guys can see what I'm doing. All right, use my pen tool. I'm going to put my cursor back where these two dark lines cross. I'm going to go ahead and click. And when I click, I put 1 point down, and I am not holding down the button on the mouse. All I'm doing is moving the mouse around. As you can see, once I click, it does attach to it. So it creates this blue line. All right, that blue line is only temporary. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go over about three big lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to go 4 big lines, and I'm going to click again. And what that does is it puts its first dark line down across that. So it's going to create this horizontal line. So now I'm going to go down 3. 1, 2, 3, but I'm not going to click yet. I'm going to move to my left. 2. 1, 2. And I'm going to go ahead and click there. And that will go ahead and create another line. So you can see it basically created 3 points. These 3 points have connecting lines. But you may also notice that there is a white void that's been put in between. That kind of like connects between all the points. Right? That is what's called a fill. There are two terms here and what I'm creating as far as a shape goes. One is called a fill, one is called a stroke. The stroke is a dark line that you may have seen that I put across and down. That dark line is called a stroke. So right now I have not created a shape. It is just line right now. It's not considered a shape. But you see that white area is filling in what's left. And if I move my cursor up towards that line, you'll see that the cursor has a little circle next to it. That circle refers to the actual finish, where you're going to close the actual shape. So if I go ahead and click that, you'll notice that the shape is now closed. It is no longer an open shape. And you created your first shape. All right. So now I want to go ahead and I want to add some more points. These little points are what are called anchor points. And if I put my cursor up towards a line, you'll see that my cursor turns into a little plus sign. If I click that, you'll see it adds another point. I'm going to add one there, add one there, I'm going to add one there. Remember what I was talking about as far as the add and delete anchor points in an old version of Illustrator? They used to be listed there, but not anymore. And this is the reason, because you never really went to the menu to actually choose them. So if I move my cursor up towards the line, you'll see that I have a subtract line there, which means that basically it's a delete anchor point. So if I click on that, the anchor point gets deleted. But I just added in 3, and that's what I want to actually utilize. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go up to my selection tool and direct selection tool. There is a difference between these two. The selection tool will select the shape as a whole shape. Right now we have 6 points. Those are considered pieces of the shape. So there's 6 points. Each one represents a piece of the shape. If you want to select a piece of the shape, then you have to use what is called the direct selection tool. The direct selection tool will only choose pieces of it or points on the shape. If you select the selection tool, they'll select the whole shape. All parts are moved at one time. Okay. So remember, selection tool is the whole shape. Direct selection tool is part of the shape. So I'm going to go to my white arrow, or direct selection, and I'm going to move to one of these points. I'm going to go here. I'm going to select that first. I did that first. And I'm going to click on the point. That basically turns blue. All the other points are white. That's important because if you have a blue point, that means that is the current point you are on. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to move this up to the next dark line. I'm going to do the same thing over here. If I click on that, I'm going to move that one up too. All right, so basically I move both points up one at a time using the direct select tool. Okay. So now I'm going to shift gears again. I'm going to go back to where the pen tool was. I'm going to click and hold on that, and you're going to see that there is an anchor point tool. If you choose the anchor point tool, this is what it's going to do. Is actually up to this point, everything has been straight lines. So from each point, it goes from point A to point B straight across. What we want to do is we want to add some curves to it. So with the anchor point tool, what we want to do is we want to move our anchor point tool towards one of the lines, or towards one of the points, I should say. And I'm going to click, hold, and drag over. All right, and I'm going to drag over until I have about 2 small boxes left from a dark line. Now, if you're doing this at home, you may notice that if you did it in the wrong direction, if I went the other way, you'll notice that it ties up in a knot. The reason it's tied up in a knot is because if you pay attention to which direction did we actually draw this shape. If we drew it in a clockwise direction. So if you're going to create an arc like this, you have to pull in the same direction that you created the shape originally. If I would have drew the shape in a counterclockwise, then I would have to pull counterclockwise to create an arc. Otherwise, it creates a little knot, and we don't want that. So I'm going to pull this over to about 2 small lines away and do that. You're going to do the same thing over here. Pull this over until it's about 2 small boxes away from a dark line. And now we got 2 arcs. Nice and simple, nothing really too complex there. But now I have these things. I want these not to be so like straight. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to click and I'm going to pull down till about, I'd say maybe about 3 small boxes away from the dark line. And I'm going to let go. Looks okay, but it's still something's off. And you can see that when you create this arc, it looks okay until it gets to about here, and then it kind of like tapers off quite fast and shoots down to the very bottom. We don't want that. So how do we go ahead and create a much deeper arc down here versus up there? Well, with the same tool, if you notice that each one of these create these handles. These are called Bezier handles. If I take my cursor towards the end of this one and I click, hold, pull down, you'll notice that I do it independently from the other one. The other one didn't change size. This one did. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing over here, except remember, if I drew in a clockwise direction, I have to pull in a clockwise direction. So I'm going to go up about 3 small boxes. But then I have this same situation down here. It's too steep. So I'm going to take this, hold down. I can do this because I'm pulling down on that handle, and that's okay. As you can see, you can tell what we are doing. All right. So as we're creating a heart here, what we want to do is we want to actually create a little bit more interest to it. So I'm going to actually zoom in to the actual bottom of it. And a lot of times, just a little side note, if you get to a situation like this and you find that this is down here too far, there are scroll bars. As you can see, you can scroll sideways and all that. I can tell you right now, I never use those. Instead, what I do is I just hold down the space bar. And what that does is it gives me this little hand. That hand, if I click, hold, and drag, will reposition where my view is so I can see. Okay. All right. And when I let go of the space bar, I'm back to my original tool. I don't have to go choose it again. So I'm going to use this again. I'm going to actually take this, and what I want to do is I want to create like a curve that kind of comes up and then kind of like repositions itself to do the rest of the heart. So I just want to create more of a point down here rather than this flat 90-degree point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this, hold, and drag down to about 5 spaces, and I'm going to pull over 1. Okay. So you can see that this part here created that little curve. But then down here it created this little hill, and we don't want that. But I have the handle, and this handle does not need to be straight. Instead, what it can do is it can create a V pattern. So if I go to the very end of this handle, click, hold, drag up till it mirrors the other one, and I let go, it will create a point like so. That's what I wanted. Right. Now this is too far down, so I'm going to go to my direct select tool, and I'm going to click on this and pull up a couple. So there I am. I have my heart. All right, so what I want to do now is that since this has been just black and white, you may just notice over here on the left in the toolbox, you'll find that there are these 2 squares. One refers to the fill, one refers to the stroke. Okay, I want to actually change this where instead of white, I want it to be red. So how do we do that? Well, It's actually not too hard. If you go to your fill and you just double click it, you'll get what is called a color picker. And the color picker has this little box, or not little, but big box that shows me the color ranges. So it's like here it says red, but red fans out to black and white. So you see all these variations of what that red is going to look like. Now, what if I wanted blue? Well, that's what this is things for. You take these little sliders, move them up, you see that you can change that color all the way to red again. If you like formulas, numbers, you can change them RGB or CMYK, and we're going to talk about that at some point. All right, but I want red. So right now it's still white, so I'm going to go over to where the red is, and I'm going to click on that. And click on the red. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And you'll see that what it does is it changes that white into red. And that's what I want. Okay. Now, what if I don't want a stroke? Well, if you notice that the red square is, now it's red, looks like it's in front of this black square with the gray square in the middle of it. This refers to the actual stroke. If I click that, you'll see that now that comes up front and the fill's in back. Anything that's on top or looks like it's in front is considered the area that is active. That's what you are working with at the moment. So with this in front, there's a little icon that looks like a little red slash. You can click that and it will take the stroke off of it. Okay. Otherwise, if you want to add a stroke to it, you can double click it and you can add in whatever stroke you want. Hit OK, and it adds it in. Okay. Okay. So that is a pen tool. Now, the pen tool does not need this grid. If by chance you want to draw with it, okay, you don't need a grid in order to do it. All right, so I'm going to actually hide the grid, and I'm going to turn off the stack to grid. And I'm going to show you that the pen tool is a more of a freehand type tool. So if you go ahead and click, you can create a point, and then you can go up here, and instead of clicking, just click and let go, what happens if you click and drag? Click and drag will create the arc on the fly. Instead of you have to create these points, and then you have to come back to it. All right. So you can create shapes much on the fly. Now, does this mean that anything in here is going to be in stone? That's what the beauty of Illustrator is because nothing's set in stone. You can manipulate these just like you can in Play-Doh. So it's like if I go to my direct select and I click a point, click, hold, and drag, I can turn that. I can change this. I can pull that. I'm going to go here. Right? I can even go to a line and just pull it out if I want to. Totally up to you. You can mold this like Play-Doh. Very, very easy to do. All right. So hopefully that works for you. I suggest you play around with the pen tool. So in the next video, I'm actually going to assign your exercise that deals with this, and I'll demonstrate how that one gets implemented. So, all right, watch that one. If you have any questions, by all means, you know you can email me anytime, and I'll be happy to help you out. All right.